Good morning to everyone. Thank you for participating in this webinar on open science in Horizon Europe, supporting researchers. This is a very important event for us, for UNICA, because open science is a topic very close to our heart. We organized some other events before, and we will certainly continue to debate this important topic because there is a lot to do. We supported also the Plan S recently, and we hope that open science and open access will really establish well in European universities. I want to thank very much the two chairs of the two working groups who organized this event. Françoise VANDOOREN, chair of the UNICA Scholarly Communication Group, and Diana PUSTUŁA, chair of the UNICA EU Research Liaison Officers Group. I think this is also another good example in UNICA of two different working groups cooperating well together. And also I would like to thank the European Commission, in particular Jean-François DECHAMP, for the intervention that he will make in a few minutes. He will be introduced by Françoise and is a part of the Open Science Unit of the DG Research and Innovation. I also want to thank also all the other speakers for all the interventions that they will make. The program looks very much interesting. I want to thank the office, especially Vicky Xonka and Laura Colò, and I wish you a very interesting and a very pleasant webinar today.
Okay, so if I may, I would also like to very warmly welcome everyone on our today's webinar. And as our president said, it's a joint effort of two working groups. So I would like to welcome you on behalf of the UNICA EU Research Liaison Officers Group, which serves as a forum for voicing joint recommendations on how to improve European research policies and funding programs and how to deal with the daily management issues concerning starting from the research idea throughout the whole project life cycle until the last payment. And one of those very important issues we would like to address here, this is the dissemination of research results, and ultimately something very connected with that issue is the open science and open access. And especially in case when we are just almost a day before the new EU program starts, Horizon Europe, and that's why I'm very glad and I'm very happy that we have a very great pool of experts joining us today. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope we will have a very fruitful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I would also like to welcome you. I'm chairing the Scholarly Communication Group in UNICA. And indeed, as open science is gaining importance for research funders, this webinar is really addressing a topic at the crossroads for EU research liaison officers who are helping researchers to obtain grants and to manage their projects, and the librarians who are more and more developing research support services. So, as you know, open science is an approach to scientific research based on cooperative work and sharing knowledge throughout the research process. And it aims to make research more collaborative, more transparent, more reliable, and more efficient. And this implies a real cultural change for the researchers. Most of the time they are locked in a competitive system in which publishing in the best journals remain the main incentives for their career advancement. One of the drivers for changing these practices is to recognize open science practices and to include them in the research reward system. But this is a long process and it takes time. And another complementary approach to make some open science practices is to make open science practices a condition for funding. And this is what the European Commission has been doing and supporting since 2006. And they have implemented this in the research framework programs. First condition related to open access to publications already in FP7. And later in Horizon 2020, the Open Research Data Pilot. And now, of course, most of us already know that Horizon Europe is going to go further to support and embed open science throughout the program. And Jean-François will tell us about it in a minute. But also our researchers will need support to understand what is expected from them and how to comply with these new rules. So how can librarians and research administration staff work together to face these new challenges and to provide appropriate support to our researchers? And this will be addressed by the next 4 speakers who will showcase examples of support already provided in the university and very often as a result of collaboration between different services and departments. So after the presentations, we'll have time for questions and discussions. So please write your questions in the chat. Now I would like to introduce our first speaker, Jean-François Deschamps. He's a policy officer in the Open Science Unit at DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Thank you, Jean-François. And we will have 10 minutes after your presentation for specific questions about the open science policy in Horizon Europe. So don't hesitate to write your question in the chat during his presentation. Thank you, Jean-François. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Françoise, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen immediately, and I will continue this introduction. So you should have the screen. So thank you again. Thank you, Vicky and the team. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Françoise. A special thanks to Françoise because you mentioned the fact that the Commission started working on open access since 2006. And you were there. And I think it's also thanks to people like you who have been by our side to advise us, to guide us, to give us some feedback and to introduce us to your network that progressively we managed to get to learn about the topic and develop it. Also, talking about learning, this is open access is a very complex issue, and we started small. We're getting bigger and bigger. And in this presentation today, I wanted to focus on, since I have about 20 minutes, on some key elements. I wanted to drop any kind of blah blah that you might have heard before from me or from others about, you know, how important open science is, how important and nice open access is, etc. Okay, so we'll drop this chapter, and I would like to focus essentially on Horizon Europe, what is expected, but also I would like to spare a few slides on Open Research Europe, our very exciting open access publishing venue. I have one side on the European Open Science Cloud, and also I will give you a flavor of the policy environment around open access. So just to conclude this introduction, also for you to understand how the European Commission works, I like to say that we don't have any evil plan that we are distillating progressively to you. We are continuously learning, adjusting, talking to stakeholders, listening to everybody, and try to go ahead. So especially for Horizon Europe, not everything is set in stone yet, but mostly it's going to be. I mean, this is how I'm going to present it to you now.
Jean-François, I'm sorry, just for a second to chip in. You have a gray box in the presentation. We have seen it, we have experienced it during a UNICA webinar once. I think it should be that you need to close the picture of the other speakers. It might be there and it casts a shadow. So
we didn't have that before. This one here,
yes.
Hide thumbnail.
Hide it. Try to hide it, and I think yes, now it's smaller and above it's still there, but I think it will not disturb the presentation. Now it's back. Okay.
That's weird because we didn't have that before when we tested it.
I've seen it once. Yes, I know. It's I've seen it once in a few months. So, but I think it will be fine. It's back again. Leave it like that,
because
and I think it will be okay. Don't worry. No, it's fine. Sorry to chip in.
No problem. You're right. Let me just see. Do you see? Because
it's fine.
You see the title Open Science.
There is a very tiny one, but it doesn't disturb at all. So don't worry. It's perfect now.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we welcome maybe also again to the world of the European Commission. We have some limitations with IT, and especially even more now with working remotely. And we cannot use all platforms. Zoom is a platform that we can use at the moment. We cannot organize meetings with Zoom, but we can, be guests. But anyway, so. Okay, so let's dive into the topic, which is, as I said, Open Science in Horizon Europe, a work in progress. So Open Science comes with rights and obligation. We like to say that it's not only, obligations, but we are here also to develop some rights. So what is going to be the situation for publications? The purpose is to ensure, and this is going to be a novelty compared to Horizon 2020, immediate open access via a trusted repository, and we're talking about peer-reviewed scientific publications. What we propose also, which is slightly different from Horizon 2020, is for beneficiaries, authors, so universities, authors, academics to retain sufficient IPRs in order for them to comply with the open access requirements, and that would include the licensing. One of our very strong proposal, which is departing from the current situation with Horizon 2020, what we don't aim at changing for 2020 is for Horizon Europe to only make eligible for reimbursement those publication fees that occur in full open access venues. That means if a journal is hybrid, the principle would be there would be no eligibility of cost from the Commission. That does not mean that beneficiaries and authors would not be allowed to publish in hybrid venues, but the Commission will not reimburse if there are costs incurred. The question is also about Plan S, what is cooking. So the European Commission is participating to the discussions of Coalition S, which is behind Plan S. So our aim is to align the rights and obligations of open access to scientific publications in Horizon Europe as much as possible with the principles developed by Plan S. When it comes to data, and I like to say that in Horizon 2020, we were very much influenced by the pilot that we had in FP7 on open access to publications, and we called it for data, open research data. But then we realized very quickly that the name was not paying justice to what we wanted, which was not necessarily, full open access to any kind of data, but was rather to gently bring good research data management with a view of openness of data. So I think we are correcting this in Horizon Europe. What we are aiming at is to establish and update a data management plan, a DMP, systematically for any research project, and ask the team behind the grant to manage responsibly the digital research data that is generated in the course of the action, and that this be in line with the FAIR principles, findable, accessible, where open access is part of it, interoperable and reusable. We've been using this sentence, this expression, as open as possible, as close as necessary for a long time now. We did not invent it. I like to say that I think that we took it from a meeting from RDA, or from a document that we saw, and we liked it, so we used it as widely, I would say, and propose it also to member states and the council, etc. So that's why you will see this expression quite a lot, as open as possible, as close as necessary. So that means that, open access to data set is the objective, unless, of course, this open access would go against the legitimate interest or constraints of the people behind in the team. What is also quite new in terms of a rationale or something that we would like to introduce in Horizon Europe is to ask also to provide access to the data or the results that are needed for the validation of the conclusions of scientific publications. I think this is new in our rationale. When we talked about open access, it was more about, the possibility to share, the openness for the openness. We didn't really have that other side of the coin, which is also, can we trust your analysis? Can you trust your conclusions? Is it possible to validate your results? So I think this is a new narrative in open access. And I think it's quite important. So there will be some reference to the principle of openness for validations. My screen is frozen. Okay, try this. Let me just check because the connection is not super good. Yes, that was it. So open science as the modus operandi. So of course, the star of open science in Horizon Europe are the publications, then the data, but also I have to say a few words about the European Open Science Cloud. The idea is also to have in some work programs, in some calls, in some topics, requirements to make use of EOSC, of the European Open Science Cloud, for the storing or for giving access to the research data. But of course, that would be additional obligations that would have to be justified, and that certainly would have to be discussed beforehand. But you might see in some of the work programs such statements. The work programs also may focus on other incentives and obligations. For instance, in some cases, particularly in the case of topics addressing public emergencies, asking for early and open sharing of research results. There can also be requirements for open access to research outputs that are different than publications and data, for instance, software. And you will be also able to find always more in Horizon Europe different new obligations when it comes to the involvement of citizens, of representatives of civil society, of end users, etc., in the co-creation of the agendas or in the content of some programs. And lastly, also for open science as a modus operandi, open science will be encapsulated throughout the program, and that means from the beginning till the end. That means from the evaluation of proposals, and we're still working on this. I don't have answers to all questions you might have on how open science is going to be evaluated. Also to the monitoring of the impact of Horizon Europe and how open science makes a difference or doesn't. I would like to repeat a few things because I think that now we can go a little bit more into detail after this introduction. So what is planned for scientific publication in Horizon Europe is to have an obligation to ensure open access to peer-reviewed scientific publication. The deposition, I mentioned it, is in a trusted repository. So that is still what we have since the beginning with FP7. The principle is archiving, self-archiving, it's green open access, and a deposition at the time of the publication. This open access should be immediate via the repository, and we introduce requirements that before were recommendations to use Creative Commons licenses, in particular CC BY or the equivalent, the latest CC BY or the equivalent for articles. I would say kind of normal scientific articles, and after discussions also with some of you and various stakeholders, CC by NC or ND, so non-commercial, non-derivative, or the equivalent for long text formats such as monographs or book chapters. What we are going to ask also most likely is to have the information given via the repository about any research output, any other tool, any other instrument that is needed to validate the conclusions of the scientific publications. So still this new emphasis on validation in Horizon Europe. And I think this comes also after what we hear about, fake news or debating the content, the scientific content of some articles or the validity. So what we plan to do then legally is to insert into the monogrammar agreement an obligation to retain sufficient IPRs to comply with the open access requirements. The metadata of the deposited publication, again, I think there's nothing really new to you, but we just go a little bit deeper compared to Horizon 2020. We're most likely going to ask metadata of the deposited publications to be CC0 or the equivalent, and also the metadata to be in line with FAIR principles so that we can easily identify the publications. And beneficiaries may publish in the venues of their choosing. So whatever, there's no obligation to publish here or there. However, when there are publication fees, APCs or book processing charges, they should be in full open access venues to be eligible for reimbursement. We still have to work also technically with our colleagues from the Research Executive Agency, to identify also the cases where, for instance, a publication is reported in a full open access journal, and in fact it's not. So we're working also with Coalition S to have the so-called journal checking tool functional also for Horizon Europe. A few words on research data management. So what is planned in Horizon Europe is the obligation to manage the digital research data generated in the action in a way that is responsible and in line with FAIR principles. So for all projects that are generating research data or collecting them or reusing them, we need to ask for a DMP to be produced and to be updated regularly. And that DMP will be really the key document to discuss the research data, which should be as soon as possible, with the deadlines when they are that are set up by the DMP, deposited in a trusted repository. As you read from the slides, we suggest also CC BY or CC0 or the equivalent as the licenses. Still following the principle, as open as possible, as close as necessary. There is no change compared to Horizon 2020 in that, so no strict obligation for openness in that sense. And again, as I said before, some reference to the possibility of reusing or validating the data, therefore the necessity to have also information about the tools or the instruments. I just wanted to make this one slide also about Horizon Europe, because of course we're talking about rights and obligations with regard to open science and open access more precisely, but of course the European Commission is not only about obligations, it's also about putting up some calls and redistributing EU taxpayer money for projects to be put in place, and projects that can support all of you in the specific topic of open access and open science. So we are at the moment proposing activities, and nothing has been green lighted yet. So that's why I have to put conditional and not give too many details. But we are writing some calls, some topics, and some are in relation to the capacity building in institutional open access publishing. We think this should be really be given a priority, and also to have possibly some projects finance that would support the different scientific disciplines for open access and open science in the implementation, in particular in the social sciences, arts, and the humanities. So nothing is finished yet, but I think that it was important to mention this. A very important novelty, but now this is going to be available for Horizon Europe when Horizon Europe starts, but this is already a reality for Horizon 2020. It's Open Research Europe, or ORE as we call it. So if I hope you have heard about it, about this development. We've been working on that for a few years, 3 years, I have to say, is to propose an open access publishing venue to the beneficiaries of the framework program. Now, for legal reasons, we had to start with Horizon 2020, but there is a clause that we can open as soon as Horizon Europe will start, so that ORE is also available for grantees from Horizon Europe. So the main assets of ORE is to have a publishing venue for EU research, which is of high quality, that is reliable and that is efficient. We wanted this open access publishing venue to follow standards as high as possible, and to have also processes for the publishing that are quick and transparent. There is a scientific advisory board that represents different scientific disciplines. What makes ORE also interesting is that if you are a beneficiary of Horizon 2020, you can have your papers published there and at no cost to you. There is no administrative burden, so the European Commission will take care of the APC. I can't remember if I put a slide about the price, but we had negotiated, and it's 780 euro per publication, whatever its length. What makes also this tool quite interesting, because we had some criticism before that when there were publications published after a grant had expired, the Commission would not be able to reimburse APCs. It still is for legal reasons. So what is different with ORE is that if your project has expired, and I think we have up to 4 years, and you have publications that pertain to the result of that project which is finished, then you still can use it and to publish your results. So it's possible post-grant. And most importantly, this is not an obligation to use. This is just a service that is offered to you. What are the specificities of the publishing service? Of course, the publication has to be original, and it has to stem from H2020 funded research and soon from Horizon Europe. It is going to be for all scientific areas of the framework programs. It will provide immediate open access. When it comes to licenses, it will be fully compliant for reuse. The system behind ORE will be an open peer review, so that means that the identities of the reviewers will be known, and the post-publication comments will also be possible, and it will have all the features of the mineability for taxonomy data mining. It will be super networked and indexed with new generation metrics. So each article will have a dedicated page with its metrics. The system is as transparent as possible. The conditions are aligned with the European Commission policies and principles. So basically, if you publish in ORE for H2020 at the moment, or soon, you will be automatically compliant with the rights and obligations for open access. So it makes things somehow easier for you. And why did we do that? Long story short, we tried, and we saw also that some other funders were doing that. We discussed with them, and here we are. Also, here's a slide about the transparency of the cost I wanted to share with you. Is that we made a public procurement. So the overall cost is 5.8 million euro. We signed the contract earlier this year, and it's going to be for 4 years. So how does it work? Basically, a chunk of it, which is 1 million something, I can't remember, is part for the infrastructure of the platform, and the big part of what remains of all those millions are going to be for the APCs. Now, we are going only to pay for what is published, so don't worry. eventually 100 publications. It's not that F1000 research will get, you know, whatever, 4 million for that. No, we have limited the APC, whatever the length of the text, to €780 per publication. F1000 research is not alone. They are working with GYA, with Libre, and with Eurodoc as subcontractors, and OpenAir is also a partner. The official launch of EURLO is set for March 2021, so when hopefully there will be some publications already there. But yes, it's an invitation to click for the infographic if that would be working. But what I would really like you to do is to visit the platform, and you have the address here at the bottom of this slide, because yesterday we went from the splash page of Open Research Europe with just information to the fully functional, almost fully functional platform. So if there are some papers from H2020 beneficiaries, they can already be submitted now. So I think this is really a big achievement for us. So yes, submissions are open. You can read the author's guideline. There are 3 different types of author guidelines according to your area of research. And please submit as if you want. I have just one slide I want to do quickly now to give time for some questions. EOSC, just to say that it is still a work in progress. I think the big development is the EOSC Association, the 3rd bullet point in this slide, that was established last July. So I think that EOSC is still slowly but steadily developing into a reality. I want to be brief now because I'm still looking at the clock. I wanted to make one slide about the policy environment, because this is how we work as the European Commission. Of course, one of the main focuses in research and innovation is the framework program. But of course, we are encapsulated into a big political environment. And there's a new document that was adopted on the 30th of September, which is called A New Era, New European Research Area for Research and Innovation. It's one of these political papers from the European Commission, you will say. But it says a few things about open access. So, I mean, for us, it's a locomotive, which is quite important, that help us also convince, also sometimes internally, our colleagues about the importance of what we're doing. So, EURLO, the Open Research Europe platform, is mentioned as one of the objectives of achievement for ERA. So I think we're going there. We're going to work also next year on a new study also to analyze the rights of author to be able to share publicly funded peer-reviewed articles without restriction. This clumsy sentence is of course the result of lots of discussions with the legal services and our Secretary General, but basically that means that we still keep an eye on the issue of copyright and licenses in Europe, and we would like to, you know, at least highlight there are some issues and maybe try to do something all together with the 27 member states. There's of course a mention of the cloud, and I think it's Françoise who mentioned also the research assessment system. This is also something quite big where our unit collaborates, but we are not the main driver. But this is absolutely a necessity, is to address open sciences practices in a research assessment system and to really adapt the research assessment system. That's all. I'm finishing this with a big thank you to all of you, and I think I'm going to close my stop sharing, and yes, I'm back to the picture and ready to take some questions. Oh, I see there are lots in the chat.
Thank you very much, Jean-François, for this very clear presentation. And we now know what the challenges we will be facing to meet all these new criteria. We have so far one question for you, in fact, in the chat. There were other messages, but there were not questions for you. And it's rather something you would be asked to comment on rather than a question. about immediate open access. What would happen if the country is not a publish and read, has not a publish and read deal? You know what I mean with a publisher. So when cost of EPCs are included in the license, then the open access, sorry for a lot of journals, open access in a lot of journals is only possible after an embargo period. So what will the researchers be able to do, I guess, is the question of this participant.
Yeah, no, I fully understand. The issue of immediate open access is indeed quite a big one. I mean, it's political from our side. I'm not hiding it. It's political. We are forcing into a certain system. On the other hand, we are not. We are going in one direction, which is immediate open access, and the Commission wants to finance only publishing venues that are immediate open access. We hear, oh, what about a transition, etc. We've been transitioning for at least 10 years. I mean, open access is really about, okay, the embargo were a system that would protect the interest of some publishers, but the idea of open access, the concept itself is about being immediate. So there's been some transition. We'll continue the transition because Horizon 2020 will continue with the same rights and obligations. We don't intend to change the mandate for open access to put the one of Horizon Europe into Horizon 2020. So there will still be a long tail of publications that will follow the possibility of embargoes, etc. What we are strong with is about the licensing requirements, the rights also for beneficiaries and for authors to keep enough rights for them for their own production. And if you carefully look also at the words that we're using, we're talking about obligations to beneficiaries, and in most cases. Not about ERC or Maris Code of Security Actions, but in most cases, the beneficiaries are like universities. So we are putting an obligation, not necessarily on the authors and the academics that are maybe that could feel a bit isolated, but to the beneficiaries, that means to the university. So we are also working, we talk to UNICA and to others to say, yeah, let's work on this together. I mean, also, there's no obligation to publish. We're not forcing anybody to publish in a venue or the other one. So if you have a problem with a venue, we say, hey, you're going to have also ORE with Horizon Europe. So we are paying already for ORE. So I think we are, you know, in that kind of balancing of, you know, imposing some obligations, allowing some rights, and offering some solutions.
Okay, there's one more question about this. Is will the Commission ask for exceptions on the embargo, like the Wellcome Trust?
No, that's very unlikely. We don't work with exceptions like this. I mean, the difficulty and the beauty of the European Commission and the Horizon programs is that we fund so many different fields of research and innovation. Not only in one country, in one continent, but all over the world. It is very difficult to macro manage things. What we do, what we've been doing, I think 2 years ago with Horizon 2020, was to look at those beneficiaries, so those, I simplify, those universities that had some projects, and when they had more than 5 projects, more than 5 publications that were not open access according to the rules, we would have the project officers from the European Commission contacting the different project managers and ask them, you know, to clarify these, maybe to make retroactively open access the publication, etc. So we still can work on this, thanks to the project officers of the European Commission to kind of keep the dialogue with the project managers or the grantees, but don't expect a list of exceptions. I don't think this would be workable.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about data repositories. Projects will have to use trusted repositories for publications. Will there be the same obligation with data repositories? Will the EU define a list of data trusted repositories or a list of criteria?
Yeah, maybe rather kind of a list of criteria. We're working on that. I mean, when I said that we don't have any evil plan, I really mean it. So, and you know, so that Horizon Europe is a bit delayed in time. So that gives us also a bit more time to work on a document. So a bit of administration and legal terms. We have for the framework programs, the model grant agreement. I mean, we have, of course, the regulation, which is, you know, the legal text where we have all the articles, etc. So this is our legal basis. But then we have the model grant agreement that already specifies and starts explaining a little bit the requirements. And then we have the annotated model grant agreement. If you're familiar in Horizon 2020, it's more than 800 pages that start to explain, you know, the model grant agreement. So we're working now. We started really working this week on writing those explanations in the annotated model grant agreement of Horizon Europe, and then after that will be another kind of a document, which are the guidelines. So we'll work also on guidelines on open access and open science that will, you know, further explain. So that gives us also a bit more time, and in particular for defining and also by listening to you, what would be your advice, what we could do when it comes to the repositories. I think that the best would be to point at some repositories that are fine, you know, the Zenodo, etc. But again, if we have to start making a list, we would really need the support of everyone. So we're working with different stakeholders, and we are ready to take on board any kind of suggestion from your side.
Thank you. Now, two more questions in the chat. So we're running out of schedule, so I will ask these two questions and then we will stop. Sorry if other participants still have questions, but we will have...
I can send some written answers also later if you want. If you can send me the questions, then I can also elaborate a little bit more. That's not a problem. Okay,
well, I just take one then. How should we proceed in situations when a publication co-author has institutional restrictions imposed on open access publishing by the employer, which are in conflict with Horizon Europe open access requirements?
I mean, if there are some specificities, I mean, then discuss with the project officer of the Commission when, you know, or even now if you, but I mean, when, just discuss with the project officer. I mean, if you have a specific case in mind, then discuss it. I mean, there are always possibilities to discuss with your project officer to explain your issue. It's a very theoretical question. I understand that behind there is a very specific case, and I cannot really answer on a specific